Mrs. Branch, I'm actually going to start with you and ask you, what was JCS, Journey Community Schools, like before you all started to engage a trauma-informed and culturally responsive approach?
Yep. So when we first began using the ticker practices, we started noticing trauma long before we had a language for it, through chronic dysregulation, attendance challenges, and students that were academically capable but just emotionally unavailable for learning. For staff, just as I hear you talk about just some of the emotional exhaustion, compassion fatigue from trying to work to support students, and just an increased reliance on punitive responses because the adults were just simply overwhelmed. One of the things that before TICR, which is what we call it now, the trauma was addressed reactively, sometimes through individual behavior plans, discipline referrals, isolated counseling supports. And so we knew that we were treating symptoms, but not, we didn't have a system for it.
There was this turning point that you all had where you said you needed to do things differently. You needed to show up differently. And I definitely want to bring you in here for this, Mrs. Roberts, because as we talked about being able to build some of these systems, I would love to hear a little bit more about what you all started to create within the class at the classroom level, but also at the school-wide level that you felt started to lead you in this direction where the culture was changing and it wasn't just one or two classrooms or teachers who got it right started to change.
We didn't want it to be one more thing that we have to do. When you begin the school year as teachers, there's already so many academic demands on you. So when we start talking about culture, it's like, lady, stop, pause. Do you see who's in my classroom, right? And so just creating a space where this is what we do, we had to step back and get really tight on logistics. Even if we had the finesse, the wording. Yes, we are a trauma-informed schools, and that is what we're going to be. But with that, we had to name it something so that they know, oh, we're already doing RTI, right? So we do response to intervention for academics. We're going to put response to intervention for behavior. And so I think that's where it all began for us. Once we were able to put it into the space and know exactly how it fit in the space, we were able to work the program and do it intentionally and consistently. We have not stopped. We are always integrating something new. But with those new integrations, we don't stop what we've already been doing. The regulation station, that is in every single one of our classrooms. That's in our principal space. They're in the hallways, right? Kids know that. But we're not going to drop regulation station because we're adding something else. We're just going to keep building on top of it.
As we're talking about some of these tools, the trauma-informed culture responsive approach is a whole school approach. So there's a ton of different activities, a ton of different ways that folks may lean into it. And regulation stations was one of the key ones because we knew we needed to help students feel regulated enough so that they can stay in the classroom and so that, the teachers don't want to run out themselves. And so, as we build that out, I would love to talk a little bit about how you all integrated it, starting from how you chose your implementation teams to how we dealt with resistance. Because there were definitely folks who were like, look, I don't know about this regulation station. I came here to teach. And I don't think this is a part of what we're doing. And so how you started to gain buy-in from that, because I think during our implementation team sessions, you all had some really phenomenal ideas around how to make sure that this was complementary to everything else on in the school, the restorative justice practices, the SEL. You all were doing everything. And this was something that complemented all of that. And so I would love for you all to talk a little bit about that and how that built out.
They had a survey for the students, connection sessions, and that was an opportunity and a space for kids to connect. That changed my practice. Kids were like, "They fuss too much. That just makes me angrier. It makes me want to rebel." And I was like, oh, so I'm actually triggering you. So then I became a little softer in my approach. And so with that, now that started working for me. And if it's working for me, it's going to work for you. And so what we did was with PBIS, with trauma informed schools, we just took little pieces and slowed it down. When I was transferred into the network level and started building bigger systems and bigger opportunities for scholars, then it became, at first, the first year was about compliance. Every single classroom had to have a regulation station. For those first 30 days when we were teaching culture and how do you move into our hallways and what is the cafeteria expectation, we taught how to do, how do you sit in a regulation station? How do I get in the regulation station? And I would check for compliance. And then I would send out a report and have data to those principals and say, hey, 70% of your classrooms has a station. And then the principal, of course, we want to be 100%. And they would get into it, right? Then we were able to settle and start digging into what is in a regulation station? What is the proper use of a regulation station? What is the data out of the regulation station? And so then I was able to build out interventions before suspension. Did you try the regulation station? What interventions did you do before you even send them for a suspension? So it's starting to become this big ball in this bubble of excellence. And so what we have seen in the data is I can remember 5 or 6 expulsions per year. I've not had one this entire year. So going from 5 to 6 expulsions to none is phenomenal, especially where we were rooted in our demographics, in our culture, in our city.
But the other thing I think is so important is what you're sharing is this fidelity, right? The implementation team was the one who was going around checking in classrooms to see how the teachers were using this and to coach them on how they might be able to use that. Mrs. Hanley, I want to jump to you because I want to dig a little bit deeper into connection sessions, because connection sessions were something from the trauma-informed culture responsive program that we did to really get a sense of like what are stress triggers that students have, what are ways that they show up with challenges, and it's really focused on attunement. So we start to build trust in the classroom and students don't feel like they need to act out in order to get the attention they need. And I love what you found with the reflection sheets. Could you just talk a little bit about that process?
So our connection sessions, just to kind of frame that, were very brief. They were like a 5 to 10 minute activity that each classroom was responsible for implementing. We had an advisory session at the beginning of the day, so that's when they did it. And the goal of that whole thing is to establish, as Dr. Pickens said, the attunement, the psychological safety of not just with us as the student support team, but with your teacher. Within the connection sessions, we did a reflection sheet. So that was something Dr. Pickens provided to us, and that was to really get in tune with what are some of the triggers that our students are experiencing, what are some of their emotions that they're feeling, and then what would they what tools would they like to see to help them soothe those emotions. So that's where we kind of got some ideas for the regulation station. And so through that reflection sheet, as Jamaica said, the triggers were super eye-opening. All of those things that came out really helped shape all of the activities we did going forward, and is a practice that we've adopted across the board just for listening to our students and having that opportunity for them to have a voice. So giving the students the opportunity to talk, those listening set in addition to connection sessions, like the listening groups and things that we've implemented as well, have just been super helpful.
One of the parts of a culturally responsive approach is believing that the students and the staff that you're supporting already have answers. You're not seeing them as a weight that needs to be released or you're having to save them. You believe that they already have strengths and answers that they can bring to the table. And so you mentioned the connection sessions. The listening sessions were actually another part of what the implementation team did, going around asking various targeted questions to groups to better understand how you can support them, which informed this kind of whole system approach. Mrs. Branch, I would love for you to talk a bit more about how we supported staff burnout, particularly through the wellness buddies, and how that helped to shape buy-in for what we were doing with the trauma-informed and culturally responsive approach as a whole.
With our wellness buddies, it gave teammates an opportunity for them to have someone else to be able to reach out to, someone else that's looking out for me, just a person that I can share things with at school and have a connection with. And so it gave us a chance to slow down into the systems that were needed so that we can focus on giving teammates the skill to focus and support students. You could really see the impact of having systems work, not just responding to fires and one-offs.
And everything that we were rolling out for the students to do, the staff did it as well. So with the reflection sheet, when we're talking, or if we're going to ask these students to share what triggers them, then we were asking staff to do that as well. It helped us from a staff perspective to work with one another more effectively. And that in turn just trickles down into the students.
We got the opportunity to skill build and start with the adults and model that behavior for students. And that became a part of, this is the culture of, this is just what we do. It's not behavior, or it's not bad behavior. It's just, this is what I'm dealing with today. And here's how I'm going to get through it together with someone that can help me out.
When you think about your schools and when you're thinking about the kids and the little children that are in your school, think of it just like that. It gives you an opportunity to just think about the children. What do they need? And how we are there to serve the children, and not just academically, but emotionally. And we have to make space for it. You can't have one without the other. These are babies. They're not numbers, and they're not their behavior. And so having this system just helped me realign my thinking to that. These are kids.
Yeah.
And they need us.